Hello, everyone. It's Joyce Barnett, and I just wanted to introduce you to my latest book, I Learned to Soar, How I Discovered My Purpose, and I was asked to do a reading from it, and I thought I'd do it live and then take it from there. I Learned to Soar, How I Discovered My Purpose is part one of my autobiography. Let me be still here a minute. And it's dedicated to the Newburgh community where I grew up. And I'm going to read from the book a little bit from chapter 1. Chapter 1 is titled Growing Up in Newburgh. I had the good fortune of being raised by both parents. In today's generation, many children are being raised by single parents, particularly mothers. I know people who were raised by single parents and made it through life just fine. Being raised by a single parent doesn't have to be a devastating experience and does not mean one can't be successful in life. If we are honest, we know that children miss their absent parent very much. So I was blessed to have both parents in the home while I was growing up. During the 1960s and 1970s, fathers went to work, brought the money home, and raised their children. They were not perfect and made a few mistakes, but their intention was good. This is how I remember my father and the father of my peers. I do know that girls need their fathers just as much as boys do. I was a daddy's girl to the core. His presence made a profound impact on my development from girl to woman. Our family moved to Kilmer Boulevard in the Lincoln Park subdivision of Newburgh in Louisville. We moved from 15th and Anderson Streets in the West End. I remember Mama telling Daddy repeatedly that she wanted to move to the suburbs and raise the kids in a different environment. They found out about Black people purchasing homes in Lincoln Park and wanted to get on board with it. When we moved to Newburgh, I had 4 siblings of 7. My sister Kimberly was born a few months later, and Joe and David came later. We were on cloud 9 as we looked at the big backyard we had to play in. My sister Valerie and I made friends with our neighbors, Carol Cole, whose house faced ours from the rear. Cheryl Anderson lived across the street, so we would have her as a friend for many years, still do. We eventually met the Goodwins, who lived on Alex Avenue. And Bonita Lane. It was in my new neighborhood that I started to envision my future. I loved reading books and seeing pictures of skyscrapers. I envisioned myself living in a big city with skyscrapers around the age of 9. I would sit in the backyard and the next door neighbor, Mr. Leon, would say to his wife, "Margaret, there goes that girl again." Maybe they thought I was odd. My parents were serious about us not getting into trouble. They did not want us running off to the different streets, and we had to have permission to even wander a block over. Daddy was a nice-looking man. He was a brown-skinned man with wavy black hair, a neat mustache, and an athletic build. Daddy had a great sense of humor, which came to him naturally. He also was swift at giving everyone he knew a nickname, even people he didn't know well. My father, Otis Cleveland Sr., was a native of Springfield, Tennessee, and one of 9 children. He served in World War II after telling the recruiter that he was 18 when he was just 16. The story is he wanted to do something with his life because he was not happy in Springfield. It was during one of Daddy's breaks, they called it a leave back then, that he met my mother, June. Daddy had a passion for fast cars. He liked and bought luxury ones, although he could never deny that his first love was a sports car. But he was a Chrysler man, recognizing he had a family to transport. I remember a terrible accident he was in. The big, brown, beautiful Chrysler sat in the front yard after it was dug out of the ditch. It was totaled so badly that strangers driving by stopped to ask, "I just wanted to know if the driver in that car is okay." Daddy made it without one scratch. The men in our community had good paying jobs at the General Electric plant, Ford Motor Company, Louisville Nashville Railroad, which was known as L&N, International Harvester, and a few tobacco companies like Philip Morris and P. Lorillard. Daddy worked for L&N. The men raised their families on a good income. Daddy was a fashionable man. He had a wardrobe full of suits, Stetson hats, and alligator shoes. My mother, June, was a woman of small stature and made her presence known. She was very outspoken, talked to us about God, and was forever planting seeds in her children to make something out of themselves. "You have to do more than just exist," she said. And many of Mama's sermons were delivered to her daughters while she pressed and straightened our hair at the brown stove in the kitchen. You can go see the world when you grow up. Just because you were born and raised in Louisville doesn't mean you can go to Paris or live anywhere else. As I got my hair straightened, I had wisdom nuggets placed in me. Her words dared me to dream. Mama spent most of the time as I was growing up as a housewife. She would take part-time jobs here and there, although Daddy was the breadwinner. That is, until the late 1970s when Mama started her own catering business. She was a fabulous cook and was praised for her entrees, especially her skillet pot roast and chili. I was also a prayer cloth child. My mother was a follower of the late Reverend Frederick Eichenroder, known to the masses as Reverend Ike. She would order prayer cloths for her children. She placed them under our pillows as a point of contact for the prayer of protection and prosperity. How did I feel about the prayer cloth? I loved it. I did not realize at the time what this fully meant and represented. I would experience it again when I embraced my own ministry as an adult. The 1970s was the era of Sly and the Family Stone, the Commodores, Isley Brothers, Earth, Wind and Fire, Average White Band, Gladys Knight and the Pips, Aretha, Diana Ross and the Supremes, and the list goes on. I grew up on James Brown's music. He was my favorite. During the summer, my peers and I would go out in the middle of Kilmer Boulevard to dance. Sometimes we had contests. Most of the time, we taught each other the latest dances. The 1970s was the time that we greeted each other with, "What it be like?" We wore Nehru jackets and bell-bottom pants with platform shoes. Guys drove big whips like the Buick 225, known as the Deuce and a Quarter, the 98 Oldsmobile, Buick Riviera, Cadillac Fleetwood, and the Caddy Brougham. Today, kids refer to them as the hoopty. Isn't it something how as young women we identify the worth of somebody by what they drove? Those were the days. Music by groups like the Intruders, Spinners, and the Delphonics was popular. Tony Churchill, Newburgh's very own, was a member of New Birth, the group that made it big time, with hits like Wildflower, Dream Merchant, and It's Been Such a Long Time. They were loved by everybody from all over the country. In 2013, when I was in New York, people were still singing Wildflower, and I heard it repeatedly on an oldie station while I was in Philly visiting. My memory will always be the community of parents working together for the good of raising their kids. And who would have imagined that guns and violence would become a part of our children's generation? I did not see that coming. And so that's the end of chapter 1 of I Learned to Soar, How I Discovered My Purpose. I hope you'll get a copy. It's on Amazon.com. And it's published by Daisyblue Publishing Company out of Georgia. And Daisyblue did a beautiful job on my product. And I want to encourage you to consider that company if you decide to publish. I Learned to Soar, How I Discovered My Purpose. How I discovered my purpose. I'm going to do some more readings. You all have a blessed one. Bye-bye.